Welcome to Mocktails and Masterpieces with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. Today's episode is sponsored by Anthony Team Realty.
Greetings, ICO fans. Matthew Kraemer here, ready to start a new season with our marvelous orchestra. And to join us on opening night with a wonderful singer, Mezzo-Soprano Ashley Dixon is here with us. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much.
We're delighted that you're joining us for our October opening program featuring Berlioz's Nuit d'été. Before we dive into the work itself, I wonder if you could just share with our audiences a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I come from Peachtree City, Georgia. Very fitting, the city of peaches. I went to school. I did my schooling at Louisiana State University and University of Michigan. I did my graduate studies there. And then I did my young artist training at San Francisco Opera, where I did a couple of years there. And so that's like the journey of my singing, and then have been freelancing. I walked out of the young artist program in January of 2020, and so we were ready to take on the world, and then that shall not be named happened. But so I've been freelancing ever since, and very excited to sing on this concert with you guys.
And some major accolades in your own career already: the Metropolitan Opera, which has the annual competition. And I'm very curious about this route that for singers. I'm a violinist, became a conductor almost by accident, and every profession kind of has its career path in some way or another. But for singers, I mean, really, these competitions are paramount for being noticed by agents, by artistic administrators, conductors. Tell us about your experience, and more importantly, it must be nerve-wracking to be under such immense pressure, knowing that career you could skyrocket with a good showing in some of these, and you've excelled at them.
Yeah, it's a thing that looms over every singer's head, I think, in that time period of like this huge American competition. There are many competitions throughout the United States, but most people know about the Metropolitan Opera competition. And it's an incredible competition in that I think it's still this way, that it's free to apply, and there was at the time like no pre-screening, so pretty much you were getting talent from every single walk of life, and so it could really just bring somebody out that you didn't have the opportunities that maybe somebody else did, which I think was just so incredible about the competition itself. And when I was very lucky to do the competition while I was a young artist at San Francisco Opera. So I had a lot of help to get ready for it. I was in, coachings every single day, working on my arias and working on my presentation and to get ready. So I will say that helped with the nerve aspect, I think, being so prepared. They made me so prepared that it was almost, I just walked in there and it was, there were nerves, but it was going to be, I had nothing that was going to be new to me, hopefully, I had everything prepared and everything thought out, and I was very lucky, and it was a very supportive competition, which you don't really hear, I guess, a lot about. There was a lot of support and a lot of guidance, and there was just also nothing like the opportunity to be able to sing on the Metropolitan Opera stage, at 26 years old. It was life-changing, really.
I'm fascinated as a conductor who has worked in opera, but primarily in the symphonic world. I'm always fascinated with singers and the entire process of learning a new role, and then also going into production, which can be 3 weeks, is usually 3 weeks. Some cases it's getting condensed. I mean, to be able to put an opera together, and some cases opera holds together by like a miracle and a prayer in some cases. I mean, in fact, these enormous Strauss orchestras, Wagner orchestras, Puccini, Verdi, whatever the case is. But it's vastly different than coming and singing Beethoven 9, which you'll put together in 2 or 3 rehearsals in just a few days. I'm just fascinated about what you and your career and all the roles that you've sung have taken away from opera. What's it like to dive into a new role, or even to come back to a role that you've sung 2 or 3 times before. It must be a very personal experience, I would think.
Very much so. I've one role that I've been very lucky to do multiple times is Adalgisa in Bellini's Norma. And with something like that, I find in bel canto, I find different challenges every single time I come into the role, whether it's a new cast or, new people that you're singing with that bring out different aspects of the role for you. Acting wise or even vocal wise, especially with these in bel canto, you're singing these very intricate duets with your partners, and it brings out something different every time, I find. And I've also been fortunate to do some new works, which I also love to do, and I would say those are also some of the most rewarding, because the process is not like anything else when you're doing a premiere. Those are really when you talk about hope and a miracle. It's usually new works. You're like, well, I hope this is, it was new on the dress rehearsal and now it's going to be brand new to audiences. Things change. Things are changing even when performances are happening, which is really crazy, but at the same time it's so thrilling to watch. And I feel like as an audience member as well, it's really thrilling. But I love character work. I love study. I sometimes love the quickness, and that's one thing I love about doing symphonic work is the quickness at which things come together. And so sometimes I love a small, like a 3-week opera process, because usually, sometimes it's 4, 5, 6 weeks, and then you start getting you start getting antsy to get on the stage. But when you have these quick things, music has to happen so fast and everybody's brain is turned on at maximum capacity. And that's when I love that kind of thrill.
I love that. You mentioned new opera, and I've done my share of new opera, and you're absolutely right about the inherent challenges in that versus these war horses, these chestnuts that we always come back to. Traviata has a tradition, just like Brahms' Fourth Symphony has a tradition, whether it's you can go through the singers or the conductors. But with new music, you have the composer there, and then there's no recorded history. I know you've done a lot of work with Jack Hagee and his operas, but I want to talk about your span, your repertoire, which is immense. You go back to a love for the Baroque repertoire. You mentioned Berlioz prominently in French repertoire, which we're going to talk about, but all the way up to new music. Is this always been the case that you've been interested in the old and the new and everything, with 400 years in between?
Yes, I've never been able to. A lot of singers come into their, into their own, and they're like, I love Verdi and I sing, this is what I sing, or I sing Puccini, I do this. I've just been so enthralled with it all. And especially, I know I love new music. But I also love Baroque music, and I love bel canto, and I love French repertoire. And I'm hard to pin down. I just think there's so much complexity to it all. Singing Baroque music is so interesting. I know sometimes it can be hard to get in, just like new music. I think sometimes people think it might be unobtainable, or they're searching for melodies or whatever, and Baroque music in a similar sense. But there is just so much genius and so much intelligence behind it, and which makes it very interesting for me as a singer. And there's so much that we haven't, that we don't get to see every day or hear every day. So sometimes I love doing that kind of stuff.
Well, I first heard you about a year ago at New Orleans Opera. You were performing with Lizette Oropesa, who's from New Orleans. And, I think I had heard your name before, but you just knocked my socks off with Gluck and bel canto selections. So I looked at your resume, and I had in the back of my mind been planning the Berlioz at some point or another. But before we get into the Berlioz, I want the audience to get a chance to hear you. Here's a little excerpt of Ashley Dixon. Ashley, that was marvelous, and I can't wait for our audience to hear you with the Berlioz. So let's talk about that. One of my favorite composers, the Symphony Fantastique, is one of the great symphonies. But I mean, I keep saying Berlioz kind of exists in his own universe because of his imagination was impulsive. It was he knew no boundaries. I mean, Beethoven pushed the limit, but Berlioz really went over the edge. The Romeo and Juliet Symphony, the Damnation of Faust, enormous works. In the operas, I mean, talk about the complexity of staging something like the Trojans, which I think the Met does every 10 years. It's
Right.
pure spectacle. But for a composer that used enormous forces, his song cycle, Nuit d'été, is a very small orchestra, actually. Probably the only work of his that we could do with a chamber orchestra. So talk to us about Berlioz in general. What is it about Berlioz's music and his vocal music in particular that you find so beautiful and captivating?
I was bit by the Berlioz bug, I would say. I had the opportunity to see Trojans when I was in Marilla, which is the young artist program that feeds into the Adler program at San Francisco Opera. And in their summer season, they did Troyen with Susan Graham, and
Mhm.
I, you know, it's you're really lucky when you're in the right place at the right time to be able to see something like that. And I was bit by the bug, and there's just something so interesting that sets Berlioz apart from a lot of other French composers. And there's also an intimacy I feel with Berlioz that sometimes, I mean, I love French work. It's one of my passions. But there's something that's just a little bit different when you're approaching a Berlioz piece, especially when you bring it with the orchestra. You hear it with piano, and that's what's so amazing. And then you hear how he took all of these textures and incorporated them into the orchestra, and it's something the same but also completely different. The first thing I sang was D'amour la dente flamme, which is from Damnation de Faust, which is also rarely done, and would die to see it / do it one day. And I remember standing there, and you just are so overwhelmed by how it all comes together. And it's just so interesting and so genius to me. And that's what made me fall in love with Berlioz.
And for Berlioz, it really is the voice. If you think about his output, I mean, they're major orchestral works, and then so many of them have the added element of human voice. The Romeo and Juliet Symphony,
Yes.
or Faust, as we mentioned, L'Enfance du Christ, and then you have these enormous choral works, the Requiem, the Te Deum, these operas, which are massive. But he wrote no concertos, for instruments. He wrote no, real chamber music, so to speak. So he's a composer. For him, his instrument was the orchestra. And this is a beautiful cycle, but it's not really a cycle in the way that Winterreise and Dicta Liebe are. I mean, there's like really no common thread. So, I mean, what is it about the poems, the texts that you find so beautiful, but also the way that Berlioz has set them?
Yeah, they're all so different. They're about love and loss, but kind of the thread of loss is more, I find, the thing that connects them all. Yeah, because they were kind of pieced together, and different people sang them, and they were originally with piano and then orchestrated, and so they're almost little Shaynas within themselves. I remember I was working on this with somebody, and they were like, they had never heard them before, and they're like, this is just one song. And I was like, it's like 3 songs in one song almost, some of them. But I love the poetry. I love the way Berlioz sets the text. I find is so it's so intimate, yet it is all of these broad topics also, and these huge thought pieces. Especially, I think probably the crux of the Spectre of the Rose it was the first one that I had heard, and the first one that I was drawn to, that made me fall in love with the cycle. And then my mind exploded when I heard the rest of it. And there's something so personal about each one, that, you know, you're not necessarily telling like a Winterreise, like a story from beginning to end, but each one has its own character, and they somehow miraculously all kind of go together.
Ashley, I'm thrilled that you'll be joining the ICO for our opening program on October 19th. Join to sing this gorgeous work by Berlioz. Also on that program, Schubert's Fourth Symphony, the Tragic Symphony, and a marvelous work by Anna Klein, Restless Oceans. Ashley, it's been great to chat with you. I look forward to seeing you in Indianapolis in a few weeks.
I'm so excited. I'm looking so forward to it.
Thank you.